Here's what nobody tells you. When a man in his 60s starts turning down invitations, canceling lunches, going quiet, it might not be depression. It might not be a marriage problem. There's an actual psychological theory that explains it, backed by decades of research. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to do about it, whether you're the one withdrawing or you're watching someone you love pull away. What if pulling away from people is actually a sign of psychological health, not a warning sign? Stanford psychologist Laura Carstensen spent years studying how people's social priorities change as they age. Her work, known as socio-emotional selectivity theory, developed at the Stanford Center on Longevity, found something surprising. As people sense that time is more limited, they don't withdraw randomly. They get selective. They start trimming relationships that feel draining or shallow, and they invest more energy in the few that feel meaningful. Carstensen's research suggests this isn't decline. It's a shift in what the brain considers worth the effort. A younger person often collects relationships for future opportunity, networking, status, options. An older person, sensing the horizon is shorter, starts asking a quieter question. Does this person add something real to my life right now? So when a man in his 60s stops going to certain gatherings or stops chasing certain friendships, he might simply be doing what Carstensen's research says is a natural part of this stage. He is editing his circle down to what matters. Here's the takeaway. Withdrawal from noise is not the same as withdrawal from connection. One is healthy pruning. The other is isolation. And the difference between those two is exactly what we need to talk about next. So how do you tell the difference between a man who is simplifying his life and a man who is disappearing from it? This is where Robert Waldinger and Marc Schulz's book, The Good Life, Lessons from the World's Longest Scientific Study of Happiness, published in 2023, becomes useful. Their work draws on the Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest-running studies on human happiness in existence. Waldinger and Schulz argue that the quality of a person's close relationships is one of the strongest predictors of well-being later in life, more than wealth, more than fame, more than career achievement. But here's the key detail. Quality doesn't mean quantity. A man can have 2 close relationships and be thriving, or he can have 0 and be quietly struggling. The number of people around him tells you almost nothing. What matters is whether there is at least one relationship where he feels truly known. So the real question for families isn't, why doesn't Dad call his old friends anymore? It's, does Dad have even one person he talks to honestly? If the answer is yes, this is likely healthy narrowing. If the answer is no, that's a different situation, one worth paying attention to. Concrete takeaway. Stop counting his social calendar. Start noticing whether he has one real connection left standing. Because what happens next, when even that one connection weakens, is where things get serious. Here's the part most people never connect to this pattern. A shrinking social circle isn't just an emotional issue. It's a logistical one. Think about what a social circle actually does behind the scenes. It's not just companionship. It's a built-in support system. It's the neighbor who notices the mail piling up. It's the friend who drives you to a follow-up appointment. It's the person who would know something is wrong before it becomes an emergency. When that circle narrows down to just a spouse, or just one adult child, the entire support system now rests on 1 or 2 people. If something happens to that one person, or if that person lives far away, there is no backup, no redundancy. And this connects directly to something more serious. Who ends up making decisions during a health or financial emergency is often whoever happens to be nearby, or whoever the withdrawn man has stayed closest to. If that's nobody outside the immediate household, families can find themselves scrambling, without documents in order, without a clear person designated during the worst possible moment. Concrete takeaway. A narrowing circle isn't just about loneliness. It's about who shows up when it counts. And this is exactly why the conversations families avoid having are the ones that matter most. We'll get to what those conversations should actually sound like in a moment. What do people actually regret when they're close to the end of their life? The answer might change how you think about a man going quiet right now. Bronnie Ware, a former palliative caregiver, wrote about this directly in her book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, published in 2012. Based on the reflections she heard from patients in their final weeks, one of the most common regrets she recorded was people wishing they had stayed in touch with friends and expressing regret over letting valuable friendships slip away over the years. This matters here because withdrawal often feels harmless in the moment. Skipping one phone call, declining one invitation, it seems small. But Ware's account of her patients suggests that these small choices, repeated over years, are exactly what people look back on with regret. Not the big dramatic losses, but the quiet erosion of relationships nobody noticed happening. So if you're the man doing the withdrawing, this isn't a guilt trip. It's an invitation to check in with yourself. Is this pruning done on purpose toward the people who matter most? Or is it just easier to say no again and again until one day there's no one left to call? Takeaway. Selective withdrawal should have a direction. It should be moving towards someone, not just away from everyone. And that direction is something families can actually help shape, which is exactly what we're covering next. If you're watching this because someone you love has gone quiet, here's the practical part you've been waiting for. William Bridges, in his book Transitions, Making Sense of Life's Changes, Revised Edition 2004, makes a distinction that's useful here. He separates a change, which is an external event like retirement, from a transition, which is the internal psychological process of letting go of an old identity and finding a new one. Bridges argues that transitions have 3 phases: an ending, a confusing middle he calls the neutral zone, and a new beginning. Retirement, health changes, the loss of old friendships, these are exactly the kind of changes Bridges describes. And withdrawal often happens during what he calls the neutral zone, the uncomfortable middle where the old identity is gone, but the new one hasn't formed yet. So what can you actually do? First, don't force reconnection with everyone. Based on Carstenson's research, that goes against what's psychologically natural at this stage. Instead, focus on protecting and strengthening the 1 or 2 relationships that are still active. Second, gently create low-pressure opportunities for connection, not obligations. An invitation with no expectation of a yes is easier to accept than a demand. Third, and this is the practical piece, use this season to have honest conversations about paperwork. Who is listed as a healthcare proxy? Who has power of attorney? Who actually knows where the important documents are? These conversations are far easier to have during a calm moment than during an emergency room hallway. Concrete takeaway. You cannot force a man back into a large social circle, and based on the research, you probably shouldn't try. But you can make sure the small circle that remains is strong, informed, and prepared. That's the real work here. So here's what we covered. Withdrawal after 60 is often a natural narrowing, not a warning sign, according to Carstenson's research. What matters isn't how many people are in the circle, but whether even one real connection remains, based on Waldinger and Schulz's findings. And that circle, however small, plays a real practical role in isolation risk, support, and who steps in during an emergency. This is educational content, not financial advice, and nothing here should be taken as medical or legal guidance for your specific situation. Here's a question worth sitting with. If something happened to you tomorrow, Is there one person outside your household who would know exactly what to do? If this helped you understand someone you love a little better, or understand yourself a little better, consider subscribing. After 60 Compass is here every week, doing the homework so you don't have to.